Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at MP Armory, courtesy of A.N.C.A, the Romanian National Association of Firearms Collectors, to talk about specifically the firearms of the communist-era Romanian leader, Nicolae Ceaușescu, and specifically his relationship to hunting, because on the one hand, hunting is sort of one of those activities, leisure activities of the aristocracy, the old style royalty. But that's the sort of thing that a lot of modern leaders also, especially communist leaders during the Cold War, it was something they aspired to match. They wanted to do the things of the aristocracy, and one of those things was hunting. However, with Ceaușescu, hunting really was a passion of his, and it was something that he was both good at and enjoyed, and it wasn't just for appearance's sake. And so Ceaușescu actually had a fairly substantial collection of firearms that were primarily for hunting. He first mostly rose to power in 1965 when he became the General Secretary of the Communist Party of Romania, having been a member of the Communist Party there since before World War II. He then kind of acquired more power until he became president in 1974, and that's when he really essentially became a dictator of the country. And this whole time, he spent a lot of effort and a lot of time hunting. And what we have here actually is one of his hunting rifles made specifically for him, or imported specifically for him. This is actually a Sako model 61 Finnbear in 7x64, like perfectly appropriate hunting rifle. So there are a number of things that resulted from Ceaușescu's interest in hunting. So first off, he was born in 1918, essentially as the son of a peasant. Grew up with very humble beginnings. This is part of what got him into power in Romania, this idea on the part of the Soviets that he would be easy to control and to lead because, you know, he was basically just a peasant, which didn't actually work out. He had a significant amount of autonomy from the Soviet Union, especially after the Prague Spring, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, very interested in hunting, and as a result, the game conservation in Romania under his leadership was actually taken fairly seriously. There were large swaths of national forests that were reserved just for him to hunt in. It's good to be the leader. There were also plenty of areas of forest that were accessible for the public to hunt in as well. Hunting was not a difficult thing to do for the public during the communist period in Romania. There was some permitting, some licensing, but not a big deal. In many ways, it was easier to do back then than it is today. Things like carrying, say, a shotgun in public, not seen as a big deal. It's so you're out bird hunting, that sort of thing. And both Ceaușescu himself and essentially the forest rangers, the conservation element of the bureaucracy, took care to preserve game, to improve breeds, to make sure that the animals were kept, animal populations were kept healthy, were kept large, were kept appropriate for hunting. There was a good conservation element to the communist Romanian government, which is a nice thing. And it's not just something that Ceaușescu did himself. It also turned into a tool of diplomacy. It was, frankly, it was a way for Romania to earn a little bit of money on the side. There were a lot of other Eastern Bloc countries whose leaders, who were also interested in hunting, would come to Romania to hunt bear in particular. Ceaușescu still holds the record bear killed in the country, and it's a country that has more of a bear population than essentially anywhere else in Europe at this point. So let's take a closer look at this Sako, because it really is pretty indicative of the small arms that Ceaușescu himself kept. So what we have here fundamentally is a totally normal commercial rifle. It's a Sako Finnbear, chambered in 7x64 millimeter, so classic, especially European hunting cartridge. There's the marking on the barrel, the model, Finnbear, made in Finland. The other barrel markings are a little bit hard to see under the scope there, but you can see Sako 7x64. And then the side of the receiver is custom engraved, special for Nicolae Ceaușescu, along with the original designation and serial number. Now, this gun spent a significant amount of time in some fairly bad conditions. It's got some wear to the bluing, especially out towards the muzzle, and the stock was in very poor condition when its current owner picked it up. So it's still the original stock. It's been very nicely restored, and it still has the original scope that Ceaușescu put on it, which is a Zeiss Diavari Z, 1.5 to 6 by 42 millimeter scope. Again, a classic excellent choice. Like, this is, in fact, what a true hunter would very likely choose. It's a good rifle, it's a good scope, it's a very practical choice. There are allegations of Ceaușescu, dumping tons of money into all sorts of frivolous luxury and gold-plated sink handles and that sort of thing. The reality is, maybe to some extent his wife did some of that sort of thing. He didn't so much. He had more, I'm not going to say necessarily simple tastes, but when it came to hunting, really actually a passion of his, practical and effective was the idea. So bolt action Sako rifle with a Zeiss scope is a perfect solution. Now, the end came for communism in Romania in December of 1989. Ceaușescu was overthrown, killed, and in the aftermath, all of his possessions ended up either taken into official, firearms, taken into official police possession, or kind of scattered to the winds as people managed to pick and choose and keep things on the sly, sort of. At his own house, there were 105 registered firearms, which isn't that big of a collection for a head of state, but it's, I think, one that's a bit more fitting for someone who's primarily interested in hunting. Ceaușescu was not a gun history collector, he was an avid hunter, and so he had a very substantial collection of primarily hunting weapons. Now, some of his guns were registered, some were not. It wasn't like the police were going to kick down his door and demand that he register all his firearms, but a lot of the guns that he got were official gifts. So I mentioned the Prague Spring earlier. When the Soviet Union sent troops in to quell the uprising in Prague, Ceaușescu and Romania were the only country in the Soviet bloc, in the Eastern Bloc, that stood up and argued against this action. And that streak of independence gave Ceaușescu a lot of street cred, essentially, with Western governments. And so in the wake of that, there were better relations between Romania and the West. There were visits back and forth with heads of state, and as one does or did, heads of state would often bring gift firearms. So Queen Elizabeth of England, of the UK, presented Ceaușescu with a pair of Holland and Holland double rifles. One of the American presidents presented him with a Colt Peacemaker. That and many other diplomatic gifts made up the 105 registered guns that were found in his residence after his death. He had a number of hunting lodges around the country in Romania that almost certainly had other guns in them. This particular one is not an official gift. It was never registered on the police registry as belonging to him, but of course we can see that it was. And it actually originally came from someone who was in the firearms enforcement police force in Romania when the revolution took place. So clearly one of those guns that was found and kind of, we'll just take this home with us. And anyway, ended up on the commercial collector market here in Romania. So I think it's pretty interesting to look at how the interests of a particular leader can influence national policy. And it's something that certainly helped the hunting community in Romania, something that kept hunting as a viable sport and a vibrant sport even. And it continues to be a destination today, both for everyday folks and also for not aristocracy so much anymore, but heads of state, leaders, ambassadors, high-level officials. Romania has a massive bear population. It's one of the best places in Europe to hunt bear. They actually are overpopulated to the point of being a bit of a problem here. So it was very cool to get a chance to take a look at this particular example. It's not every day you get to handle firearms that belong to heads of state. So big thanks to MP Armory, and also to A.N.C.A, the Romanian collectors organization, for making it possible. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video.